ما علمتنا زدنا من فضلك علما وهب لنا حكما والحقنا بالصالحين وعلمنا تأويل فقهنا في الدين سبحانك لا نحصي ثناء عليك أنت كما أثنيت على نفسك فلك الحمد حتى ترضى ولك الحمد إذا رضيت ولك الحمد بعد الرضا. اللهم صل وسلم على سيدنا محمد في الأولين وصل وسلم على محمد في الآخرين وصل وسلم على سيدنا محمد في النبيين وصل وسلم على سيدنا محمد حتى ترث الأرض ومن عليها ودخل الوارثين وصل وسلم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. Continuing with the book Wasa'il Wusul ila Shama'il Rusul, the means of approach to the understanding of the inner and outer character and beauty of the Prophet ﷺ, and we are busy with the description of the Prophet ﷺ's lifestyle and bread. And the last narration we mentioned was the author saying that the Prophet ﷺ would not eat dinner, and if he ate dinner he would not eat lunch. Meaning the Prophet ﷺ would pace himself, and we also mentioned the health benefits that lies in only eating when a person is hungry, and not to eat if a person is not hungry, and the harms also of continuous snacking. Continuous snacking is also not part of the sunnah. Many times also we find people that are particular about the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, but we find that they are particular only with regards to certain aspects of the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. So someone might be very particular about dressing in a certain way, thinking that he's following the sunnah, but when it comes to his lifestyle of eating, then he has absolutely no concern, no regard for the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ with regards to eating and containing, and watching one's stomach and containing one's stomach is more important than how one dresses in terms of the effects that it has spiritually. Obviously when you say more important than one dresses, meaning that one dresses in terms of the sunnah. The sunnah is not a particular type of dress. In another aspect, a person might be particular about following, for example, eating, because he's healthy and he's gymming and he's working out, and so he purports to people the importance of the sunnah of eating and about exercise, right, and keeping healthy, and this is sunnah, but he's got no regard with regards to the qiyamul layl or the adhkar that the Prophet ﷺ would do, right? And so we find the nature of human beings is obviously we tend to lean to those things which are easy for us, whereas the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ is a complete lifestyle, and all of us are doing certain things with regards to the sunnah, and we're falling short with regards to other things. So we never have a holier than thou attitude if we are able to do certain things, and we disparage people that are doing other things. Other people follow, they say the Prophet ﷺ did business, or they will even want to take the practice of certain Sahaba who did business and were wealthy and lived what we would regard as luxurious lifestyles, right? But if they compare the rest of their life, for example, Imam Abu Hanifa, Imam Malik, they were known to be wealthy, but their days were spent in the seeking of knowledge. They understood the Sharia, they were the highest level of scholarship. So they knew from a Sharia point of view what is permissible for them and what is not permissible for them. Someone who is involved in business, in buying, selling, hasn't even studied the Sharia, but he says he wants to take these Sahaba or these historical figures as a example for them, then this is a deficiency in a person's understanding of what is the Sunnah and the practice of the pious. And it is an entire lifestyle. And then in the bigger regard, even when it comes to Islam, what is Islam? And the different factions and groups and organizations. And we need to realize that Islam is bigger than one person, Islam is bigger than one organization. Islam is bigger than you and I and what we think is the deen. The only person that will ever be able to give the deen its haqq is the Prophet ﷺ. And every single person after the Prophet ﷺ is only fulfilling a portion of the deen. And our Mashaykh many times would mention that the deen is not based on what you think and I think, and not confined to a particular group, no matter how much we are loving this particular group, or how we ourselves are attached to a particular group. We do what we do knowing that we are fulfilling only a portion, and that there are other people, even if we have disagreements with them, they are still fulfilling a portion of the deen. And collectively the ummah then fulfill this role of, to some extent, trying to establish the deen. And so everyone is almost like fulfilling a different portion of the house. Some are perhaps busy with the roof, some are perhaps busy with with the wall, some are busy with the foundation, some are involved with furnishing. Everyone is doing their role. And it is for a person to find their niche in terms of what brings you closer to Allah in what you are doing, and that you are able to live an amicable life with people, and that your heart is sound, purified, and you in your heart know that you are progressing on a daily basis in your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and in your service to the ummah and the community at large. And this is that a person has their footing on understanding something of what it means to be following the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. Because there are also, when it comes, for example, if we're talking of the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, of eating as well, then there are these internal sunnahs of the Prophet ﷺ. His mercy, one of his greatest sunnahs was that he was merciful to people. And so a person can also, he can take the complete outer form of the sunnah. He can eat like the Prophet ﷺ, dress like the Prophet ﷺ, but he's extremely harsh in his character. He backbites people. He has a loose tongue. Then there is no benefit. Just as the Prophet ﷺ said, this person in Ramadan who stands awake at night and fasts during the day but gains nothing from their fasting except hunger, and nothing from their standing awake at night except the loss of sleep. This person who thinks he's following the Prophet ﷺ in dressing in a certain way or eating in a certain way gains nothing from that except just not wearing different types of clothes and depriving himself of certain types of luxuries. But where is that? Allah is only concerned about the heart. Where is that? Is your heart aligned with the Prophet ﷺ? Is your internal state aligned with the internal state of the Prophet ﷺ? His sincerity with Allah, his ikhlas, his tawakkul, right? What was those things in the heart of the Prophet ﷺ which made the manifestation of the sunnah in the outer what it was? That's what we have to focus for, right? But if you just look at the outer, focus on the outer, which is also good, and there is immense barakah and nur, and it is hoped also that that is a means to reaching the sunnah. But if we just stop at the outer, then we're actually doing more harm in the name of the deen than benefit. So when it comes to the Prophet ﷺ and how he would eat, and the narrations we would listen to and hear that the Prophet ﷺ went hungry, and for sometimes they went for days on end, and as we've read certain narrations, months on end without cooking. The scholars mention here as well that the Prophet ﷺ was not poor, he was not destitute, and he had access to money and wealth. So how do they reconcile between the narrations? For example, when they were conquering lands, they were conquering the fortresses of the Jews, and they, in terms of the Baytul Mal, the Prophet ﷺ had access to large amounts, swaths of date palms, etc. But we find that he also went through this. The scholars, and this is what the author is going to mention, they mention these points, and how do we reconcile between these different narrations. So Al-Qastallani rahmatullah ta'ala alayhi mentions in Al-Mawahib al-Dunya, the lengthy days of hunger experienced by the Prophet ﷺ and his companions have been deemed problematic in light of other narrations, such as the narration of him setting aside a year's worth of provisions for his family, or the narration of him dividing 1,000 camels taken as war booty between 4 companions. And fay here, war booty means what? The war booty that one gains, or the spoils of war captured without fighting. Ghanima in Arabic is the spoils of war captured after fighting, and fay is what the spoils of war captured without fighting, meaning either the enemy left the battlefield or they willfully gave over certain of their possessions as a means of saving their lives. And the other narrations of him sallallahu alaihi wasallam bringing along 100 camels on his journey for the Umrah, all of which was sacrificed and distributed to the poor. And the narration in which he sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave instructions for a Bedouin Arab to be given a large number of sheep, and many other narrations of the sort. Furthermore, many of the Prophet's companions were wealthy, such as Sayyidina Abu Bakr, Sayyidina Umar, Sayyidina Uthman, Sayyidina Talha, and others, and they had spent freely from their wealth and lives for him. In one narration, the Prophet ordered the companions to give in charity, and Sayyidina Abu Bakr radiallahu ta'ala anhu came with all of his wealth. Sayyidina Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu came with half of his. And in another narration, the Prophet encouraged the companions to equip the army of hardship, the Jaysh al-Usra, when they went to Tabuk, and times were tough. And Uthman radiallahu ta'ala anhu equipped them by providing 1,000 camels. So how do we reconcile? And the entire Sharia, if people don't study the Sharia from authentic sources, they would want to think that there's contradictions. We find verses of the Quran on its outward would seem to contradict each other, and certain narrations of the Prophet ﷺ would he advises something one time and another. For example, there are certain ahadith in which the Prophet ﷺ forbade the Sahaba from visiting, or in the beginning of Islam, he forbade them from visiting the graves. Later on, he himself ﷺ said, I used to, كنت نهيتكم عن زيارة القبور. I used to forbid you from visiting the graves. ألا فزوروها. Now visit them. So the Prophet ﷺ himself abrogates his own command, his previous ruling, right? And this is what they call nasikh and mansukh, right? Abrogation. And now he advises the Prophet, he advises the Sahaba not to visit the graves. فَإِنَّهَا تُذَكِّرُكُمُ الْآخِرَ, because it reminds you of the after, etc. We find, but there are other narrations which might be obscure to people. And there might be in books, maybe certain books of hadith which are famous, has a certain hadith disencouraging something. But in certain other books of hadith which are maybe not too people are not too familiar with them, but they are also authentic, we find that the Prophet ﷺ then encourages this thing. And now it was the duty of the scholars to do what is called al-jama', meaning reconcile. How can we understand, first and foremost, if it's verified that these hadith are authentic? How do we reconcile? And then they'll say, okay, but in the beginning of Islam, the Prophet ﷺ advised this. Then towards the end in Medina, he advised this. And so this hadith applies for people in a particular situation. And this hadith, guys, applies for people in a different situation. Then they would even study, does the second hadith completely nullify the first, right? Or cancel it out in that this one is not practiced on and the later one is practiced on? Then they would go to the point of then giving priority. If they couldn't ascertain the time, then certain madhahib would take certain, you find the Hanafis then would practice on this one, this hadith, and the Shafi'is would practice on this hadith, meaning both are valid depending on which madhab a person follows. And then also there would be a hadith, they would say this hadith goes for people living in the desert, as for this hadith the Prophet spoke about, it goes for people living in the cities. Likewise, they would not just reject outright any hadith of the Prophet without trying to reconcile. And likewise with the Quran and in anything, it's always best for a person when they come across what they think is contradictions or things they don't understand is what's called ta'miq ta'aliq. It means just suspend judgment and say, what, I need to research this, I need to ask, I need to find out more about this, or perhaps Allah will guide me. And this is obviously if a person is a scholar and they come across this. As for a lay person who hasn't even studied the deen and they just come across something and they question and they have an issue with it, what is it based on? It's not based on anything, it's based on complete conjecture and based on hawa. Because any opinion that a person has to be based on a sound foundation. The sound foundation in our deen is the Quran and the Sunnah. If we don't have access to the Quran and Sunnah, if we haven't studied it, we ought not to have an opinion in the deen about anything. And this is extremely, extremely important. The Prophet ﷺ warned about the time when people will become opinionated. And people will express opinions about the deen not based on anything. A person hasn't even read perhaps an entire translation of the Quran in English, or he's read the translation of the Quran in English but doesn't even realize that translations don't do justice to the Arabic. And translations are also the interpretation to some extent of the translator. And if a person cannot access the original Arabic, a person cannot express any opinion about the deen. And this is also one of these spiritual diseases, intellectual arrogance, and people wanting to speak in the name of the deen and the religion when it is not their prerogative, it's not their specialization. And to respect specialization when it comes to the deen is part of our deen and part of humbleness. And we do that with regards to everything else. We do it with regards to medical profession. We won't just go to a mechanic and ask him for his opinion about heart surgery. We respect specialization. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created us in this world. We respect specialization. Right? A proficient accountant, you won't take your books for accounting and bookkeeping you won't take it to a doctor. And so we respect specialization. And likewise but also we have to realize you get fake accountants and you get different types of doctors. Some are proficient in their profession, some are fake, some are charlatans, some have, they've conned the system to get to the top. And others, they are there, but they're not the best of what they do. So even within specialization, then we realize who are those whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has chosen, and they actually are at the top of their game. And these things are important to bear in mind. So how was this confusion or this these differing hadith, how was it reconciled? This confusion has been answered by At-Tabari, as quoted in Fath al-Bari, who said that this hunger of the Prophet ﷺ was intermittent and not due to destitution or straitened means. Right? Meaning at times, the Prophet ﷺ, and many times, like as we mentioned yesterday, a person can be traveling or certain times of the year, or like at the end of the month when your stipends are done now, the bank accounts perhaps is a bit less, whatever, then people would narrate things at certain times. But this wasn't constant. Rather, it was sometimes because they chose, meaning the Prophet ﷺ chose to prefer others over themselves, and other times it was out of dislike for satiety or satiating themselves and eating too much food. So many times it was a choice that they would, and this is a form of ibadah, it's a form of worship, and it's a form of spiritual striving that a person doesn't eat to their fill and say, I'll remain hungry, I'll eat just a very little bit as a means of mujahada, spiritual striving. And this has huge, immense spiritual benefits as well. Al-Hafiz ibn Hajar rahmatullah ta'ala alayhi said, the truth of the matter is that several of the Sahaba were of straitened means whilst in Mecca before the migration, and then when the Muslims migrated to Medina, most of them were in that state. As a result, the helpers lent them a helping hand by providing them homes and servants, and after they conquered Banu Nadir and secured other victories, they gave the servants back. The Muhajirin, when they came to Medina, they had nothing. Some of them had migrated with just the clothes on their back. They lost their homes, they lost their wealth. It was a huge sacrifice, the migration. We will never understand the sacrifice that the Sahaba had to go through. And the great rewards, obviously, that the Prophet mentioned about the migration. When they came to Medina, the Ansar opened up their hearts and their homes, shared with them everything, gave them servants. Some of them were even willing to divorce their wives for the Muhajirin. And they shared with them even in their agriculture. When the beginning conquests took place, for example, Banu Nadir, and they had large wealth, then these Muhajirin also returned a lot of the wealth which the Ansar had given them. So there was wealth that was circulating in Medina. So it is true that the Prophet ﷺ chose this way for himself and was able to secure luxury and ease for himself in this world if he wanted to, as At-Tirmidhi narrated from the hadith of Abu Umama, who reported that the Prophet ﷺ said, my Lord presented the mountains of Mecca to me and offered to turn into gold and silver, but I said, O Lord, I prefer to go hungry one day and eat to my fill the next day. On the day in which I go hungry, I turn fervently to you and call upon you, and on the day which I eat to my fill, I praise and extol you. And this is the reality of the matter. So the day that the Prophet asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to go hungry one day and to give thanks one day. So what does that mean? Most of the and what they would say of the Prophet ﷺ in some narrations, that if you wanted to see him sleep, you would see him sleeping. If you wanted to see him awake, you would see him awake. If you wanted to see him eating, you would see him eating. If you wanted to see him fasting, you would see him fasting. Meaning he did things so often, and he didn't do things so often, that you always saw him in one state or the other. Right? So the Prophet ﷺ, he slept at night, but he also stayed awake the whole night. So certain people that maybe were in his company or narrated narrations about how he slept or how he stayed awake the whole night would think that the Prophet ﷺ never ever slept at night. And other narrations would say the Prophet ﷺ slept. And even there's different narrations of how he slept and how much and how many times a night he would get up. And therefore it's so important to study, if a person wants to have a full picture, to study all the different narrations and then try to make and have this mental image based on knowledge of what was the practice of the Prophet ﷺ. So that even when we teach, we give people a correct impression of who the Prophet ﷺ was. We don't just teach a part or give people the impression of a part of him or certain practices. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us tawfiq. We'll stop at that narration and continue later. It's quite a long narration, inshallah. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Subhanakallah wa bihamdik. نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر.